We are now.
Excellent. Doesn't seem to take that long.
No.
Thank you. Okay, Carol, what was your question or comment?
It's when we pass. It's when we become spirit. Everybody who's had an out-of-body experience expresses that experience as going towards the light.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, when you're no longer embodied in your physicality, that light is revealed to you.
So my question would be is there any way to access that light before you die?
I don't know the answer.
I think
But
the mystics would say yes.
Yeah, because there's manifestations.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
What about through meditation?
Alan? Yeah. Alan?
There was a study by the Angus Reid Institute of People and Religion, and they asked the question, have you ever experienced the presence of God? And approximately 23% of the respondents said yes, they had experienced the presence of God. And they didn't explore it much further than that, so I can't tell you what that means, but it is more than just an intellectual idea, perhaps.
Was that in Canada?
Yes.
Recently?
2017.
That's pretty recent. Okay. So now we finally get to something called the divine presences, which is what I've been building up to for 7 classes now. Ibn Arabi refers to the tajalliyat by other names as well. A self-manifestation of God is often identified as a world or as a level. The word for level in Arabic is martaba. However, his preferred synonym seems to be presence. I'm wondering if Sherry is available. I see Bill, but I don't know if Sherry's with you. No, how about you then, Bill? Would you read the next one for us? If I bring it up. That'll be number 14.
Could you unmute, Bill? There you go.
Sorry. When referring to a general category of existence encompassing innumerable specific things, they, Ibn Arabi and his followers, often speak of a presence, hadra, i.e. a particular manner in which one being of God manifests itself, or a mode in which God displays his own reality. Ibn Arabi himself often employs this term, for example, when speaking of the mode and location in which one of the divine names exercises its influence, the presence of the merciful, Hadrat al-Rahman, the presence of the self-subsistence, Hadrat al-Qayyum. Another context in which he employs it is when speaking of the various worlds, as in the expression of the presence of the kingdom, Hadrat al-Malakut, meaning the spiritual world.
Okay, so you get the sense that this is a term that he can use in multiple ways to refer to multiple different locations, if you like. So when Ibn Arabi refers to these presences, he typically does so individually. As Chittick says, he does not state clearly and explicitly how they are related to a single whole. It fell to his immediate followers to systematize his individual reflections under the title, The 5 Divine Presences. So I want to just take a couple of minutes to talk about some of Ibn Arabi's followers. This systematized concept has undergone a long prehistory before Ibn Arabi wrote. Some of its key exponents were Al-Hallaj, who died in 922, so that's 300 years before Ibn Arabi died. Al-Makki, who died in 996. Al-Rizali, who died in 1111. And Shahabuddin Suhrawardi, who died in 1191. So all of these people died before Ibn Arabi. The names of divine worlds in this particular model changed over time. They grew in number. They held different positions relative to others and tended to be visualized in pairs. For instance, many Sufis considered Malakut and Jabarut to be a pair, while others focused on the relationship they perceived between Nasut and Lahut. Sadruddin al-Kunawi, who was Ibn Arabi's foremost disciple and also a close friend of Jalaluddin Rumi, was the first to identify the concept of the five divine presences. In his writings, they are 1, the divine, 2, the spiritual, 3, the imaginal, 4, the sensory, and 5, the all-comprehensive human level. Kunawi's disciples, Al-Faragani and Al-Jandi, both who died around 1300, revised and expanded their teacher's model in their own individual ways. One of Jandi's disciples, Al-Kashani, simplified his teacher's list of presences while making them embrace the whole of being at the same time. So remarkably, Ibn Arabi's key concept of the perfect man is not given a place in Kashani's scheme. To summarize a lengthy story, Ibn Arabi's perfect man corresponds in most of its features with the Baha'i concept of the manifestation of God. To my mind, leaving the perfect man out of a supposedly comprehensive model of divine reality was a major omission on Kashani's part. So I realize that I've glossed over many significant details in this brief overview, but I'm hoping that I've provided enough of its historical development to make it clear that there is no set description of the 5 divine presences that all Sufis have followed. However, this should not be taken to imply any fundamental discrepancy between the various schemes of Ibn Arabi's followers. So let's take a look at the 5 tajallis as defined by Ibn Arabi's followers.
Mark Durham has had his hand up for a little while.
Okay, Durham, you better say what you're going to say.
Very quick, the word Hadrat used in this quotation.
Yes.
When we speak in Arabic about Baha'u'llah, we never say Baha'u'llah. We always say Hadrat Baha'u'llah, just for information. I just thought to share this.
So if you were to translate that into English, how would you say? His Holiness?
Well, actually, you see, it comes from the verb which means to be present.
No.
Which is hadara. Hadara means was present or existed. So the presence used in Arabic here, it's close to that, which means when you say Hadrat Baha'u'llah, means the presence of Baha'u'llah.
Interesting. So that's kind of almost an impersonal way of referring to him, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, really, in Iraq, I grew up, no one will say, Baha'u'llah said so-and-so. We always say, Hadrat Baha'u'llah said so-and-so.
And in Persian, that would be Hazrat.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think Mehri has a comment. Mehri is muted.
And Bob Andergetti as well, Mark.
Okay. Oh, who wants to go first? Bob, do you want to do that? I see you're unmuted, so.
Yeah, I'm quick because I came across that Hazrat before, and I understand the equivalent in English would be His Eminence, because it carries the same sense of presence, His Eminence. I understand that would be an accurate translation of that.
Well, it's sometimes been translated as His Holiness too.
Yeah, that's what I got.
Well,
Mary, did you have a question? Yeah. Or you're on?
You're muted, Mary.
Unmute.
There she.
There you are.
Yeah. Yes, as Dirham said, the present, we said for Baha'u'llah, Hazrat, even for Abdul Baha, we mentioned that too. You know, we never said, always we said Hazrat Baha'u'llah or Hazrat Abdul Baha.
Now, does that extend to Shoghi Effendi?
Yes, but it's, I don't say no because I'm not, but they said, but it was mostly for Baha'u'llah and Abdul Baha.
And the Bab, I presume.
More common as I know, and it was even in our writing, always we wrote Hazrat Baha'u'llah and still, or Hazrat Abdul Baha. We say Hazrat Shoghi Effendi.
I see you, Nina, go ahead.
Well, for Shoghi Effendi, we say Al-Mawla.
Yeah, Mawla.
Tamam? Dargham. We say Hadrat Al-Mawla. Shoghi Effendi. Hadrat Al-Mawla Shoghi Effendi. أو Al-Mawla.
How would you
Hadrat Wali Amrullah.
Tamam. That's right too. Yeah, tamam.
Well, I've heard Iranian Baha'is say Hazrat Wali Amrullah, His Holiness the Guardian.
That's right too, yeah.
Of the cause of God. So it does apply, Hazrat Wali Amrullah. So it does apply to Shoghi Effendi too.
No.
Okay.
No?
No, we don't call Shoghi Effendi at all. We call Hazrat Wali Amrullah. That's the reason.
Hazrat Wali Amrullah, yeah. Sorry.
And Amrullah means the command of God?
Yes.
Yes.
The cause of God. He's the Wali. Hazrat Wali means,
the guardian.
Yeah.
Right.
Amrullah is the cause of God.
Okay.
So he's the guardian of the cause of God. But if I may add something.
Sure.
You see, in translation, which I love to see the Bahai writing translated into English. And if I follow the translation of Shoghi Effendi, many words, they are not literally translated. For example, you mentioned holiness, his eminence, to translate the word of Hadrat.
Yeah.
But really, if you want to take the verb itself, where it came from, as you know, in Arabic, always the origin of any word goes to the past tense of the verb.
Right.
Which is hadara. And then hadara means to be present, you know? So what attracted me in this quotation that you just said, it refers to the meaning of presence, the word presence. But we can take any, all of these translation, holiness, eminence, all of this, all applicable. Thank you.
Well, let's look at this this chart. Here they are. Does that show up, or did I do something wrong again?
It shows up, but we can only see part of it. You'll have to.
I'm going to make it a little
raise
smaller.
it up. Yeah.
Okay. So, as you see in this left-hand column, everything comes from the absolute, the God, Hak, which is another word for God. Hahut really shouldn't even be on this chart at all, because it transcends everything. It's all the rest of it is other than God. So we really shouldn't even put that on, but that's why this idea of non-tajali is put in here. So Hahut is in fact an equivalent for Hak, or the absolute. And here you can see the description. And this comes, by the way, from this book, Sufism and Taoism, which is an excellent book. And then the next level, Lahut, is a tajali. It's a manifestation, if you like, of the names and attributes and the presence of divinity, which is different from the essence of God. It's one step down. And I think in Baha'i language, you probably would be in the realm of the primal will at this stage, Lahut. Okay. Then it steps down again into the third level, which is Jabarut, which is the plane of the actions of God, the presence of lordship. And you can't be a lord unless you have subjects. So in other words, this is where relationships are occurring with God. This is also the Amr we were talking about a minute ago, the command of God. Next, we come down to the stage of Malakut. This is the place for imagination that we've talked so much about, the imaginal realm. And then finally, we come down to our level, the plane of the senses and sensible experience. So the idea of this chart is that, let's say there's some impulse that needs to come to the level down here of Nasut. It's a process of descending through these worlds of God, taking on different features depending on which level you're talking about. So really, I think Lahut is where most of the initiatives would come from. So the cause of God of Baha'u'llah would come from here. Then it takes place, the actions that were taken by the Bab and Baha'u'llah would occur first of all in the mind in Jabarut. Then they would be given clothing, if you like, half spiritual and half material clothing, which would be appropriate to Iran in that particular period. That would limit what they could do, what they could say. So for instance, the Bab did not come right out and say who he was. There were many stages of his revelation because people needed time to acclimatize to a new manifestation. And in Baha'u'llah, the same type of process occurred. Judging on the basis of the circumstances that he lived in, the environment that he was in, he was limited in what he could do at any particular stage. So you can see over the period of time that he gradually revealed more and more of himself to more and more people. So when he was leaving Baghdad, he revealed himself only to his friends and followers. But by the time he got to Adrianople, it was time to open it up so that he could manifest his new station to leaders of the world. So you get the summons to the kings and to other leaders. And then this all took place, of course, in our sensible world. So the neat thing about it is that Baha'u'llah operates on all of those levels at the same time. We typically don't. If we're lucky, we'll have some interaction with Malakut, but most of the time we're in Nasut. That's it. So we're going to say more about the fact that it is possible for a human being to have access to Jabarut in another class, but not tonight. But anyway, that gives you a little bit of a sense of how Ibn Arabi's followers depicted his way of looking at the presences of God at different levels. And the reason I'm hammering on this is that these same names of the worlds are given by both Baha'u'llah and Abdul Baha, but in much more detail. So if we want to know more about God, this is the place to go. Abdul Baha has a great deal to say about these levels. So we'd be crazy not to pay attention to them. Okay, so this, I could actually have named these Tajli 1, 2, 3, and 4 if I wanted, but I didn't, that wasn't in the original chart. So in this fourth, sorry. Oh, I better rewrite that section. Sorry, this is not clear to me as I read it. So I think for our purposes, Jabarut is really where the manifestations of God are united. That's where the oneness comes from. It's when they descend to the Malakut that they start to show their individuality and the limitations associated with them. And then that is even more visible in this level of Nasi. Okay.
Mark, what's occurring to me as you're explaining this is it's a process of moving from the invisible more and more into the visible.
Yes.
You know, because Hahut is that it's the dark matter, it's the off the chart, as you said. And then gradually in this hierarchical scheme, and it is hierarchical, and Shoghi Effendi said to May Maxwell, I think it was, we shouldn't hide the fact that the faith is hierarchical. It pops up in many different places.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a process of going from the invisible more and more into the visible plane here until when you get to us and living in Nasut, we're at the bottom of the chart, but we're still connected with the spirit. We're still connected with the theophany.
That's right.
Now for the Bab, what I found extraordinary is how much he emphasizes with this kulu shay. Shay or shy, I'm not sure.
Which means?
All things. Everything is theophanic. Everything is a theophany. In the Bab's theology, everything declares the glory of God, you know? And to such an extent that, you know, he made said some extraordinary things that are hard to understand, like the Mullah Hussein was the return of Muhammad, you know. We know that Mullah Hussein, of course, wasn't a prophet, but what I think the Bab was trying to emphasize was that the divine attributes were manifest to an extraordinary extent in his letters of the living and so on, you know. It's very fascinating.
Okay, well, I'm going to press on, Jack. I'm aware of my time here. Sorry, Linda.
Sorry, Mark. Carol has had her hand up for a while.
Okay, go ahead, Carol.
It's just in relation to Durham and what he said about like the Arabic language comes from the past tense of a verb. And then you relate that to, you know, the expression that God is the verb. And then you relate it to Jabarut, which says that he's calling us to action, to make the goodness, to make the unity, to make the justice, to make the love.
Okay, I'm going to just move on if you don't mind. So due to its intermediate position here, Malakut, it's a transitional world through which the messages from the manifestations must come as they descend to our world. It has therefore been interpreted as what's called an isthmus. A Barzakh is the term in Arabic. Do you know what an isthmus is? Where it's a small piece of land that connects two large bodies of land. So, and it's called an isthmus because it stands between two other things. In this case, Jabarut and Nasut, the Lord and the sensible world. And I use the word Lord advisedly because this is the presence of the Lord. So notice that this midway status means that it possesses the attributes belonging to both worlds. So some of the attributes of this and some of the attributes of this. Think of it as a realm of transition lying between two worlds. As Ibn Arabi describes it, this is the place in which spirits become manifest in the downward move. And similarly, bodies moving from here up become spiritualized. He refers to Malakut as all comprehensive because nothing on either side of it escapes its embrace. So Malakut embraces all of these together. In Ibn Arabi's school, a human being is also seen as an isthmus because we stand between two other things. In this case, our divine and physical natures. So we're stretched, if you like, between the two. Which are we going to pay more attention to? Consequently, human beings must be conceived as all comprehensive. For there's nothing in either of the two natures they have access to that escapes them. Okay, so I'm going to close this one and come back to readings. And read number 15, I guess we're at now. Oh my goodness. Ingrid, I guess you're still online, I hope.
Yep, Ingrid's here.
Number 15, please.
Yep, and I have great affinity with this imaginal world when I do my feng shui practice.
Oh, yes.
I think that's where I'm operating and connecting with. So let me read.
Are you still doing that?
I am indeed.
Oh,
I do it as a service, not as a business.
Okay.
Okay, so reading 15. Imaginal things share the attributes of two sides, just as the soul shares the attributes of spirit and body. The most common example of a concrete imaginal thing is the image in a mirror. Your mirror image is both yourself and not yourself at the same time. In certain respects and for certain purposes, for example, as a guide when you are combing your hair, you can treat the image as yourself. Nevertheless, the image is not you, since it is simply light rays reflected from a piece of glass.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So whether or not they consciously realize it, human beings enter this world of imagination on a daily basis through their dreams. Lori, are you available to read tonight?
If we look inside ourselves, the best place to find imaginal things is in our dreams. Here we have a tremendous diversity of objects and people that are both themselves and not themselves, or both ourselves and not ourselves. The tree you see in a dream is a tree. It is not a frog or a baseball, yet it is not a tree. If we mean by tree something that grows in the ground in the physical world. Or again, the tree that you see in a dream is both you and not you. It is not you because it is a tree, and it is you because it is simply the picture of a tree as imagined by you.
So from Ibn Arabi's point of view, it's the soul that is conscious while we dream. This is the microcosmic dimension of Malakut. Carol, could you read 17 for us?
Sir, I'm going to defer to somebody else. I've talked a lot.
All righty, fair enough. Okay, how about Alan Fuller?
Notice that the domain of dreaming is the soul. Hence, the soul is often called the microcosmic world of imagination, while the world where jinn and Satans live is called the macrocosm world of imagination. The microcosm is the human individual, while the macrocosm is the full cosmos.
Okay, thank you. The world of imagination is characterized by continual change. Nothing within the intermediate world stays the same for two successive moments. Nothing there is fixed. We know this because every dream image is constantly in the process of being transformed into other images. This realization has direct implications for the nature of the human soul itself. Belinda, are you available? Number 18.
There you go. Hi.
Hello.
Okay, 18. I like this. Lack of fixity is important to keep in view when we discuss the soul. People tend to think of the soul as something solid and defined, on the analogy of the body with which it is usually paired. Even the body, of course, is not fixed, but it is relatively solid and constant, especially when compared to a dream image. I like that. Helpful.
Okay. So what are we missing? Are these people one? Oh, okay. All righty. As a go-between, the soul does not share in the relative fixity of the divine and the physical realms it is constantly interacting with. Let me see here. Well, David, are you, David Erickson, are you available?
Yeah. Number 19.
Yes, please.
The soul is born from the meeting between a relatively fixed body and the divine breath, which is pure, unchanging luminosity. Hence, the two sides of the soul are relatively constant, but the soul itself is a flux, a continual flow of impressions, a running stream of consciousness and awareness. Muslim cosmologists often say the soul is an ocean without shore. The soul is like the ocean because the ocean has hidden depth and moves constantly, as the waves on its surface make clear. However, unlike the ocean, the soul has no boundaries, no fixed limits. When we discuss the return to God, we will see that the non-fixity of the soul has important consequences for human becoming. It means that because human beings are not this or that, they can be anything. And what they become in this world determines the form they will take in the next world.
Thank you. So I'd like to conclude our review of Ibn Arabi's teachings with a brief look at the role he assigns to the heart. He provides perhaps the most detailed discussions of the heart found in any Sufi's writings. His primary concern is to show how this subtle human reality displays God in his infinite self-disclosure once it attains to the fullness of being in the perfect human being. So for anyone interested in pursuing his profound meditations on the heart, I would highly recommend a book by James Winston Morris, written in 2005, which is called The Reflective Heart, Discovering Spiritual Intelligence in Ibn Arabi's Meccan Illuminations. Ibn Arabi is especially concerned to bring out the roots of the heart's nature in the divine reality. To summarize his thoughts, he tells us that only the human heart is adequate to receive the self-disclosure of God. By contrast, the intellect focuses its attention on the non-manifest face of God. I believe Zilda is there tonight. How about number 20?
As both incomparable and similar, God is at once inaccessible and present. That dimension of the human subtle reality known as intellect perceives God as incomparable. It can comprehend God only in terms of his name, non-manifest. In keeping with the root meaning of the term, intellect constricts and confines God to transcendence and incomparability.
And so we saw earlier that the theologians and the philosophers were the ones who tend to focus on the incomparable names of God. Okay. The root meaning of the term akal, intellect, is closely connected to the word ikal, which means fetter, that which is used to hobble a camel. Reason strives to define and delimit God, but that is impossible. The heart frees God of all constraints and absolves him of all limitations. The heart alone is able to perceive God's manifest face, his self-disclosures, through the faculty of imagination. Let me see here. How about Leslie? Number 21.
There I am, unmuted. In contrast, that dimension of the human reality known as the imagination perceives disengaged realities in sensory form. It alone is able to grasp God in his self-disclosure through the name manifest. But intellect and imagination each perceives one half of reality. Only the heart, through its fluctuation from one state to another, is able to perceive God as both manifest and non-manifest, both similar and incomparable, both present and absent, both near and far.
Thank you. So I should point out that the Arabic word for fluctuation is taqalub, which comes from the same triliteral root as kalb, which means heart. The dictionaries define kalb as reversal, overturn, transformation, or change, and taqalub as alteration, transformation, change, fluctuation, variableness, and inconstancy. Therefore, Ibn Arabi sees the heart as a place of constant change and fluctuation. Margaret, are you available still?
Yeah, reading 22.
That's right.
He finds the divine root of the heart's fluctuating nature mentioned in various hadiths. For example, the Prophet said, the hearts of all the children of Adam are like a single heart between two of the fingers of the All-Merciful. He turns it wherever he desires. O God, O turner of hearts, turn our hearts toward obeying thee. In many hadiths, God is called the turner of hearts, or he who makes hearts fluctuate, from William Chittick, The Sufi Path of Knowledge.
Okay, thank you. The turner of hearts. Kashani, a follower of Ibn Arabi who died in 1335, almost 100 years after his master, defines the heart in the following passage of his book, The Technical Terms of the Sufis. Let me see here. Well, Durham, how about you? How would you like to read number 23 for us? And you can say the Arabic.
The heart is a luminous, disengaged substance halfway between the spirit and the soul. It is that through which true humanity, al-insaniya, is realized, tahaqqaq. The philosophers refer to it as the rational soul. The spirit is its inward dimension, batin, and the animal soul to its mount and its outward dimension, halfway between it and the body. The heart is the intermediate reality in existence and in levels of descent, like the guarded tablet in the cosmos. Kashani Ishrat al-Sufiya.
So maybe I should say just something about the animal soul is its mount. What the heck does that mean? The idea is that it relates to the idea that the soul can be considered a rider on a horse, and that it's up to the rider to take control of the horse. Otherwise, it's going to be driven all over the place. So it's one of the first steps in the Sufi path is to assert your control over the body. Anyway, so that's why the animal soul is the mount on which the spirit rides on top of. Okay, so it's interesting to note that Abdu'l-Baha frequently uses the term rational soul that we just saw here. For many years, I had the mistaken idea that he was referring to human reason, but it's much more illuminating to equate it with the heart in the sense that Ibn Arabi is using it. In Islamic texts in general, and in Ibn Arabi in particular, the heart is a locus for the knowledge rather than for sentiments or feelings as it is today. The Quran employs the term heart about 130 times and often attributes understanding and intelligence to the healthy heart. Ibn Arabi compares the heart to the Kaaba, considering it the noblest house in the man of faith. Okay, our last reading goes to Bob Andrighetti.
Mark, just before that, Ingrid
Yes.
has her hand up.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Ingrid.
In that reading 23, when you look at the chakra energy system that has its roots in, sort of Hinduism and other religions, the heart is that intermediate. It's at the fourth chakra, and it's like the isthmus that you referred to.
Yes.
It connects the body, the lower three chakras, the sort of material chakras, with the upper three chakras. So I find that it's very interesting. It all kind of comes together.
That's nice. Oh. Okay. Yeah, so Bob, let's finish this off, number 24.
Number 24?
Yes, please.
He, Ibn Arabi, also declares that it is the throne of God, al-Arsh, in the microcosm, alluding here to the oft-quoted Hadith Qudsi, "My heart and my heaven embrace me not, but the heart of my believing servant does embrace me." Thus, embracing Sa'a takes place through knowledge of God, al-ilm billah, Futuhat al-Makkiyah. The heart possesses such a tremendous capacity, wusu, because of its connection to the All-Merciful, between whose two fingers it dwells. Is that part of it, the following?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
The heart is his throne and not delimited by any specific attribute. On the contrary, it brings together all the divine names and attributes, just as the All-Merciful possesses all the most beautiful names from the Quran and Futuhat al-Makkiyah. William Chittick, The Sufi Path of Knowledge.
Okay. So that's the end of our presentation about Ibn Arabi. And I think you'll see in this last idea, my heart and my heaven embrace me not, but the heart of my believing servant does embrace me. This is an idea that's clearly in the Baha'i faith. Right? So that's one of the reasons I wanted to end on that note, because it's a nice bridge into the subject that we're going to start next week, which is the Baha'i take on all the worlds of God. Well, I feel like I've inundated you with a lot of information.
Mark, Bill has a question, and then Carolyn.
I'm going to close the sharing so I can see people again. Thank you. Okay, Bill.
So this is a relatively pedestrian question, but I was wondering what level in the Islam world, at what level are these kinds of discussions had? Do they study this in madrasa school, or is it something that the people who are trying to be imams rise to? Where can you put this knowledge level in a context of the world, the Islamic world?
I have my sense as to what the answer is, but I think Durham's probably got the real answer, because you've seen the Islamic world up close and personal for years.
Well, if you give your opinion, I'll add to it, but I just want to mention that in the time of Baha'u'llah in Iran, the Shia loved the work of Ibn Arabi.
The Shia did.
The Shia in Iran, especially in the time of the Bab and Baha'u'llah. So imagine that the people were all attracted to that, to those concepts. And it's interesting, but in general, you know, like you say in Saudi Arabia or Iraq or other places, this is not a widely studied by Muslim in any Muslim country. It's really, this subject are to specific people. I cannot say what percentage, but it is not the majority.
Right.
I can say that. And probably one of the things that people were attracted, I could be wrong, to the Babi and Baha'i principle is because they were exposed to all these ideas of those mystic people. And when we read tablets of Baha'u'llah, he addresses them using many of these terms, like in the tablet of the Son of Wolf. He uses some of these terms, you know, in many other tablets. He uses because he's addressing them, you know, and so on.
So
now, Mark, you say your.
No, are you saying that this is a relatively elite group who are aware of these discussions?
Well, no, I wouldn't call them elite as such, you know, but like, for example, if you go to Najaf or Karbala in Iraq, you will find many who are in this line, okay? But if you go to 3 provinces, you won't find many people interested in this. But I mentioned earlier that in Iran in general, you know, this issues were widely discussed and read.
Interesting. I wasn't aware of that fact.
Oh yeah, I mean,
because Ibn Arabi was a Sunni, right? So you would have thought that they would stay with the Sunnis, but clearly not.
But because of his praise of Imam Ali and the Imams, you know, the Shia loved his writing and they supported his work. Gosh. While a number of Sunni scholars criticized him, you know, like in Saudi Arabia or Bahrain, they criticized his ideas. That's why he was liked by places where there are Shia.
Okay, I learned a second thing tonight. That's really, really important. Does that answer your question, Bill?
One of the quotations you used in this last few weeks, where Ibn Arabi describes his dream of the 4 caliphate
Mhm.
You remember?
Yeah.
He criticized the three who are considered high by Sunni, but he praised Imam Ali, who is the head of Shia, Ithna Ashari Shia. You see, that's why he was liked in Iran a lot.
Okay. That's very, very useful. Okay, Belinda, you have a point, but you're muted. You're muted. Belinda, we can't hear you.
Okay.
David.
There we go.
Sorry.
This is a question that I'm probably is going to go to Durham because it's a conversation we had over the weekend with our Sufi friend. And the Gabriel Hadith was brought up. And we were talking about the part where it mentions a time when they'll be building. And she said, yeah, all those tall buildings. Because she'd mentioned that to us a year ago. You know, especially all the tall buildings in places like Dubai. And as being kind of signs of an end. And then she mentioned something else. She said in the Quran, and she used a couple of words I couldn't grasp, but apparently they're words that mean little men. And she said, but of course, they're not really little men, but the virus is rather like what this is talking about, that people would be attacked by tiny little beings. And I thought, well, yeah, you know, back in that day, there were no words in any language for viruses and germs. You know, so yes, you might use a word, and I wish I could grasp what the word was, and I wonder if Durham can confirm what she was saying or enlarge on it.
Durham, you're muted. There we
I'm
go.
sorry, but I don't know about these little men. I've searched myself.
She did use a word that she says comes from the Quran, and I didn't catch the word. I'll have to get her to spell it for me.
Any other questions or comments from anybody?
Can I say something?
Certainly.
Remember, you were talking about Nasut, Malakut, all those stage.
Yes.
Of course, Nasut is belong to us. But suddenly I remember some prayers from, for example, when you pass away, your soul, you know, they said, Malakut Abha Suud Nemud. That's the meaning of no possibility, my belief, nobody can but be in Malakut except when some people pass away, the soul of them be in Malakut Abha. Malakut Abha is, as I believe, is a place of, as you mentioned that too, is a place of Baha'u'llah or prophecy. That I think that we have in some lots of prayers. If I'm not mistaken, this came to my mind suddenly. Is only belong to the pure soul or something, we have that.
What was the level that Thomas Breakwell achieved?
We're going to talk about that, I
Next
think,
week?
in a future talk, but it would be Jabarut.
Jabarut,
Yeah.
not Jabarut.
Abdu'l-Baha gave a eulogy for him and mentioned that.
Yeah.
Mark, could I add something, or did you want to respond to Mehri?
No, go ahead, please.
And Carolyn also had her hand up.
Okay.
Before me, go ahead, Carolyn.
No, go ahead, Jack.
Well, Mary said what I was going to say earlier, that Malakute Abha, the Abha kingdom, is usually reserved for the blessed souls who have passed on. But according to what you've been teaching us, Mark, in the dream world, in the Elame Mithal, it's possible to enter Malakut.
Yes.
Like you can have a dream of being in heaven or going to a temple or seeing Abdu'l-Baha or even seeing Baha'u'llah. And so I assume that in a dream state, you are accessing Malakut. But normally we don't live there.
Now, one of the things that I skirted around because it just opens up the topic too much is that there are many, 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 many levels within Malakut.
Yeah.
And so the concourse on high is at one of the high-end levels of Malakut. But there are lots of levels which are much lower. And you saw a reference, I think, in one of the readings to Jinn and Satans in Malakut. So those are obviously at the low end of the spectrum. So we have to be a little bit careful about how we refer to it. I'm quite content with the idea that we visit there every night. But which level, sub-level differs from one day to the next. Well, 1 minute to the next even. Sorry, I think Carolyn and then Linda?
Yeah.
Okay, and then we have to close it down.
You know, I think this is such an interesting way to finish today, speaking about the heart, because so many times we don't give it credit for its, how can I say that, what it can hold. When we do have a dream after we say a prayer at night, it's like an answer to that request, and we don't take it seriously. I think that again here in the section of unity, Baha'u'llah says, "Oh my brother, a pure heart is as a mirror. Cleanse it with the burnish of love and severance from all save God. And the true sun may shine within it in the eternal morning dawn." Well, it goes on, but we don't have enough confidence, I think, or we don't put enough importance in that relationship that we can get from an inspiration in our dreams. And I think we should develop that. It's something that if we can have that kind of connection, it's not something to take lightly.
I couldn't agree more. And I think one of the reasons why we tend not to invest much validity in these things is because the society around us doesn't give it any credit whatsoever.
Right.
So there's no support system for that way of looking at things.
Exactly.
But among the Baha'is, I think we owe it to ourselves to reinforce it, to allow people to talk about their dreams, for instance.
Yes.
And to run things by each other and just generally support the validity of these insights. Belinda, you have the last comment, question.
Okay, well, again, this is sort of, it's not really, it's sort of a detailed thing. I'm still trying to understand what are jinn. I noticed that jinn and Satans go together, but they're not the same thing. Jinn aren't Satans and Satans aren't jinn, I guess. But what are they?
You have to do some research on that, Belinda.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Why don't you come back and tell us next week what you found?
Thanks. You can.
A challenge.
Yeah. No, I'll help her on that.
Excellent. Excellent. I'd be very curious to see what you come up with. I'm going to write a note about this. Yeah. Well, folks, I think we probably worn ourselves out. It's 9:34, so why don't we say goodnight?
Thank you, Mark.
We'll see you in a week.
Thank you.
And we'll talk about Baha'i.
Thanks. Happy dreams.
Thanks so much.
Everybody.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Aloha.
Thank you
Aloha.
very much about that.
Good night, Lisa.
Okay. Back.
Okay.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Happy dreams.
I once heard a Muslim tell me that the jinn were aliens.
Yeah, that's not going to wash with me. Thank you.
That's a
nice
good
try.
answer. I like it. Oh, boy.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay, folks. Good night, Wayne. Sorry we didn't see you, but I feel you're not feeling too well, right? Anyway.
See you next time.
No problem.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.